some common lug nuts so you'll be prepared to bolt the tool to your car correctly and understand what's out there in the market. First, we have your acorn bulge lug nut, which typically has a 3/4 hex and has a fat head on it. The other one that you may not be familiar with, but is a great lug nut, especially if you have to use a spacer on a vehicle for some reason or another. Perhaps you can't build the wheel the exactly way you need, or a buddy may have wheels on his car that he can't buy the wheels that he needs yet, but he needs to make them fit. Maybe pick them up at a swap meet. This is called an ET mag lug nut. And if you look right here, it's conical seat, so it fits most all common wheels with a 60-degree taper, but it has a little tiny shank on the end. And what that little shank does is it gives you an extra 5 or 6 turns on the lug nut. So if you've got a small spacer plate on there, this one lug nut right here will help make up those lost threads by actually going further down into the lug hole and giving you more bite and clamping force. The other neat thing about this particular lug nut is if you know someone with a front-wheel drive vehicle that has a little vibration in it, especially at highway speed, many times this type of a lug nut will help center a lug-centric wheel directly onto the hub of the vehicle, make it straighter and more centered, and hopefully should eliminate some of the vibration. Here's some other lug nuts that we have. You may be familiar with mag shank lug nuts. Now you've got a standard mag lug nut, which is about 3/4 of an inch, and you also have an extended mag lug nut like this one right here, which is common in your old Krager SST wheels and some other racing type applications. It's got a 1.379 inch shank, or somewhere pretty close to that. The important thing to remember, depending on what the application is, these lug nuts have to have a washer. Many times the washer is built onto them, but if you're working with an old school application such as like a Krager SS or a Keystone Classic, you're going to need the additional washers, and you're going to need to make sure that you have the correct washers there. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Have a round outside diameter. One's punched in the middle, one's punched to the side. Notice on the back that it says wheel side actually engraved into the washer. You'll make sure that that faces the wheel. There's a concave shape to this washer, so as you torque your lug nut to spec, this washer applies a little bit of resistance to it and presses against the wheel to hold it in place. Now the center punched washer is used for a 5/4 3/4 bolt pattern, whereas the offset washer is used for 5/4 1/2 and 5/5 bolt patterns. Now if you have a 5/5 bolt pattern, it'll only fit a 1/2 inch stud, not the 88 and up trucks with a 14mm stud. That's a completely different part number. Now if you're working with a Keystone Classic, the washer on it has an oval outside diameter. Again, it uses a center punched and an offset punched washer to fit the bolt patterns that we mentioned earlier on the Krager SS. This washer specifically sits down into a recess that's actually cast into the wheel. So make sure, whichever one that you're working on, that you have the correct washer and that you have it placed on the wheel exactly where it needs to go.